Hey folks, Mr. Dell here. We are looking at factoring, actually utilizing this distributive property to then kind of work backwards and do things what we call factoring. So let's go through this. This is from CPM course 3, and this is section 8.1.1, specifically number 8-10. So it says use the distributive property to rewrite each of the following expressions as a product. This process of rewriting a sum as a product is also called factoring. It is called factoring because you are writing the expression as a multiplication of factors. So, distributive property, let's review that. Remember, distributive property is this, that if I have A times this quantity B plus C, right? So I'm just showing if I had some number or some variable multiplied by an expression, in this case is binomial B plus C, that would be the same thing as taking the A times the B as well as the plus the A times the C. So it's taking that A and distributing it in, right? You would take that number that's on the outside of the parentheses and multiplying it to each of the terms. So that's distributive property. That's what that is. So what I'm looking here is I'm looking at this 4x plus 8 is the the answer to using the distributive property. So I want to go backwards, and that's considering factoring. So I want to figure out, how did I get 4x plus 8, right? What times this binomial inside? What could I put here? What number times this expression inside would give me 4x plus 8? So we think about factors, right? Multiplication of factors. What are some common factors? So a common factor of each of those terms is 4, right? Of 4. So there's that 4 can come from 4 times x. That 8 can come from 4 times 2. So what that means is that if I factor, I take the 4, and now the 4 is on the outside of the parentheses, and what would be inside would be I divide out that factor. A reverse of multiplication is division. So I end up with an x, or 1x plus 2. So I thought about what number does each of those terms divide by, and now this is the distributive property in reverse here. So I factored that to come up with this. Because if you notice, if I multiply through, 4 times x would be 4x. 4 times 2 would be 8. Again, using this distributive property idea. Okay, so if we look at the same one here, again, what number could I factor out? What goes into 45 and 5? Well, 5 does. So I could say that could be 5. And when I take a 5 out, what would be left in there? Well, negative 45 divided by 5 is negative 9. And then this 5 goes into the 5x, right? So it would be a 1x, so minus 1x, or just x. So that's one way to factoring. What you can also do is, you notice there's a minus in common here, a negative, right? I could actually say this is negative 5 and then factor out a negative 5, which would change that to a positive 9, and that changes to a plus x. So that right there would be a nice factored answer. This would also work as well. Because if you take the negative 5 now, watch. If I take the negative 5 and distribute it, I get what I had here. Negative 5 times 9 is negative 45. Negative 5 times x is that minus 5x. So that's factoring. Last one, 7x and 21. So what can factor out is there's a 7 in common. If I can factor out a 7, I would be left with x minus 3, right? Because 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 3 is 21. So it's reverse of the distributive property, which is factoring, which you're using division in this case. You're dividing out the common factor. And there's the answer for C. Okay. There we go.